Talking with the experts.
So I guess what I'm looking at in terms of business is that you take your personal stuff into the business. Okay. And I do corporate trainings and I work with people in government departments and stuff as well. And the changes that we notice is if you're working at the leadership level, whether it be, C-suite or whether you're working with, frontline managers, doesn't matter where, if you've got influence over anyone, customer influence as well, if you're working on yourself and you are getting rid of your limiting beliefs and you're looking at those new possibilities there, you're going to find that your staff are more efficient. They want to come to work. There's going to be so many changes there. There's a more lighthearted sense in a sense of happiness, if the word. I don't like that word because to me, it's more peace and contentment. Happiness comes and goes, but contentment hangs around. And I think when everyone's more content, I think that's when there's this, people settle and they feel safe. There's a phrase that gets used a lot at the moment, psychological safety. And especially with, the last couple of years we've been through.
Talking with the experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name's Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com, and Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners, and you can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Tania Davies from Mindful Impact, and we're going to be discussing the art of slowing down to achieve more. And Tania can bring practical, evidence-based, transformational, slow leadership, training and coaching to your organisation with the help of the Success Slow Coach. And Tania is a very successful coach and trainer, and we've known each other digitally for quite a number of years, and this is our first actually face-to-face meeting. So I'm really looking forward to what Tania has to share with us today. Welcome, Tania, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so tell me about a little bit how you came into your business name of Mindful Impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to do the corporate rat race. I used to do the 9 to 5, or if that's what we'd like to call it. It's probably more like the 8 to 10 in reality. And I did that for a very long time. I swear I've probably doing it since I was a teenager. And it got to the point where I had young children and I really didn't know who my children were. And they probably didn't have an idea of very much who I was either. I was starting to notice some of those health issues starting to come in for me that happen in the background. We sometimes blame it on age. Reality is the stress levels that I was going through at that point and doing what I was doing was really catching up with me. And there came that point, like many people in my world that I coach that are in the corporate world, where enough was enough. I retrained myself at the same time as working a very intense job. And after quite a number of years, I stepped away and went, I need to finally do this. And I'm very much about being mindful in the moment without criticism or judgment. So I'm a bit of a bull in a china shop too, so I did need to make impact in the world. So the two naturally came together as Mindful Impact for me.
Well, that sounds that's a really great story. And I know a lot of mothers go through the same sort of situation because they're working, and don't see their children very often, and yet children often wonder, who's this strange person coming into my house every night?
Yeah, I was so busy with all my distractions that I didn't even know who I was.
Yes, and that's another thing that happens too. We tend to get lost, don't we? And then some tragedy befalls us, and then we're forced to look at ourselves and our life. So I'm hoping that didn't happen for you.
Well, it did, and unfortunately, like most of my clients, it tends to happen too. But I'd like to get to the point where people actually realise before that happens that change needs to occur. In what I'd like to think that the universe likes to tap us on the shoulder a few times before, and we can pay attention to the first few times rather than it slapping across the face.
Oh, yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah. So take us through your, I guess you've got this acronym called SLOW. And if you could just take us through that process.
Yeah, definitely. Look, the people that I work with are so busy, nonstop. And that's probably because there's a lot of society expectation on people being successful and being busy. They seem to come together. There's that, that it gets forced and drilled into us. Certainly did for me at a very young age. And I think the moment I get my clients to just stop and just be in their own stillness for a while, that's when the change starts to occur, because there's so much that's gold in those moments that start to come up when we actually have the courage to be vulnerable enough to stop, which is the S, and just be in our own stillness. And I do definitely teach people to just sit in that space for a while. It's very uncomfortable if they've never been there before, and that's why I hold their hand, because that's where we then get to move into the next stage, which is listen. And we're going to listen to that intuition and that inner wisdom. We're going to pull out the gold from those moments. And then we're going to move on to the O, which is observe. And we are going to observe mindfully, without criticism or judgment, who we are, where we've been, and where we want to go. And clearly for most people, there's a bit of a difference between who they are and where they're at and where they want to be. And it is for me really about working out what are the blocks and the limiting beliefs and those negative emotions that are getting in the way of that journey. And I guess when we've done really the heavy lifting at that point, we dive deep, we work with the inner child, we do all that kind of stuff. Then we move to the next stage, which is really important, which is the W, which is actually about wondering about what new opportunities are out there now, because we've removed all those filters and all that heaviness around our thinking, and we've really worked on our mindset. We now have a huge world of possibilities that are out there, and making sure that we are very clearly targeted and focused spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, all in alignment for our business to be where we want it to be. And of course, I figure I come from the place of if you look after you, the business follows.
I know it's always important for anyone to do their self-care at least weekly. I mean, daily would be ideal if you could just find even 5 minutes for yourself every day, just to sit back and actually, just take those deep breaths and just slow everything down so that you can be present for, your family, your business, your friends, whatever the case may be. So what sort of techniques do you teach people to do the slow system?
The very first thing I always start with is just breathing. Because there's a lot of work out there, and you can go and Google to your heart's content about the effectiveness of breath work. But for me, it's simply a case of everybody assumes they know how to breathe. And I do for myself sit with my breath a lot. I used to have asthma when I was younger, so I never ever take for granted my breath. And for me, it is a case of, scientifically, I know that when I come back to my breath, I'll be able to reset my autonomic nervous system, take myself out of fight or flight mode. And I think for most people, if they catch themselves every now and then sighing, or they catch themselves holding onto their breath or taking those extra breaths, that's a really good sign that there's some work to be done there. So for me, I always come back to the breath. It's never going to be not there. If it is, I'm in trouble. So for me, it's not like I'm going to leave it behind like my mobile phone. I come back to the breath because it's so grounding, it's so familiar. And I know at a physical level, the reality, the evidence base is that when I come back to my breath, I allow my body to go back into rest and digest, and for all my organs to do what they need to do. And that is so grounding for me. I'm a very visual person, so I like to visualize at the same time as doing the breath work there too.
Yeah, I like to meditate, and I can actually go quite deep when I meditate. However, I don't practice it as often as I should, or as often as I can. I just it seems to be one of those things that doesn't come second nature for me. And I know that I should be practicing it more often because I feel so much better afterwards. And,
as a clinical hypnotherapist, it's my job to get people to go inside and do the work they need to do. And I think fundamentally, what does it mean to be a hypnotherapist? It's about getting people to be super hyper focused on something. And I love the fact that we can all become super hyper focused on our breath when we need to be. I mean, let's just get rid of all the mythology there about what actually hypnosis is. We're changing brainwave states. It's as simple as that. And if you can do that to serve you rather than to your detriment, then you're on the money. So that's another technique, is self-hypnosis,
I love it. It's great. When I just put on some like soothing music, something without any lyrics, just music, gets the brain waves going, and it's just, it's so relaxing. And it's sometimes when I've been under hypnosis, I actually feel like I want to go to sleep. When I've woken up and they say, "Oh, it's time to wake up
Yeah.
now." Oh, do I have to? My brain's saying, "No, I don't want to wake up yet."
And it can be quite addictive too, because we spend so much of our lives in that busy state, that having to be everything to everyone, because we're in fight or flight mode so much. When we indulge ourselves to get out of fight or flight mode, such as self-hypnosis, it can be a bit addictive to just want to stay there, because it is the place we should actually be hanging out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And it's just so, I don't know, it's relaxing, it's euphoric, it's like, and sometimes after I've come out of hypnosis, these aha moments seem to pop into my head, and I think, oh, why didn't I understand that before? Because it gives my brain a chance to
Make the
slow down
connection.
and the aha moments are like, especially in business, and you just feel so stuck in some idea or some task that you're trying to do and you can't get around it, and then you just stop and
Yep.
oh, that's how it goes, and I love it. It's so good. It's
Yeah,
really healthy
absolutely. Look,
too.
in the stop part of my slow program there that I talk about, that's where I get people to be brave enough to just get vulnerable with themselves. Because when we do vulnerability, that's the place that creativity and innovation like to hide. Not only is that's where change work happens, but the epiphanies that you will have come out of that slow work, that's gold. And that's where we become more productive. And that's the work that I really am pushing with, especially the executive people that I work with.
Yeah, it's I can't say enough about it. I think it's just a wonderful space to be in, and I absolutely love it. I just need to find somebody that will just hypnotize me for, every day.
No, you can do it to yourself. And it's funny you should say that, because I get so many people coming to me say, I'm so anxious all the time, etc. Well, you're actually already hypnotizing yourself if you're doing anxiety. So you're a really good candidate for proper hypnosis with a clinical professional. If you are doing anxiety, you're already well down the path of suggestibility in that space, because you're constantly giving yourself negative suggestions. How about you flip it for positive ones?
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I guess a lot of us, we were brought up with negative talk, and that translates back into your adulthood, because you think, well, that's what I grew up with. People were telling, me that I was not good enough, and
Yeah.
if you do that the first 7 8 years of your life, and that's what you're told, I mean, that's what you grow up with. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And the hypnosis really does help with self-esteem and
That's right.
comparisonitis and imposter syndrome and all those other things. And I'm so grateful for the people that have come into my life to be able to hypnotize me and get me out of that horrible negative self-talk that I grew up with. It was, yeah. And sometimes you
Absolutely.
don't think. Yeah, I'm over 60 now, and honestly, it's taken me till I was like 58, 59 or 60 even, to get out of that pattern of negative self-talk. It's just
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah,
just lives with you
absolutely. Look,
forever.
and like we've said before, it usually comes to a head for people. So excuse the pun then. It comes to a head because we get to a point where enough is enough, and that's the point at which you're ready to actually go and do the work. um, I don't tend to play on the surface with people. I absolutely have to get to the root cause of things for people, and the reason I do that is because I don't want you coming back in a year from now going on, here's another symptom in my life and then another one. That's just playing in the surface. And if you're going to play in the big leagues, you've got to go deep. So when you do that work with someone, and I always say you do need really good rapport with someone and a really safe place to land with them, because this can be heavy. But one of the things I like to think is that nothing is so serious that you can't have a good laugh with it at the same time. And yes, a little bit of a lighthearted approach and a whole heap of forgiveness at the same time. Because, even though we did grow up in those environments which we couldn't control, forgiveness for the people that were doing the best they could at the time, because they didn't know any better than that, but also forgiveness for yourself of having gone through what you've gone through and the thoughts that have led you to where you are now.
Yeah, so it is important to forgive yourself. And
Mm.
I don't think people think, oh, well, I don't have anything to forgive myself for, but really you do. Trust me. You do. So I guess, Tanya, how on a personal level, it all works. But if you're a
Yeah.
business owner, how can this help your
Mm.
business grow?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a business owner. I'm a 2 times business owner at the same time. So I guess what I'm looking at in terms of business is that you take your personal stuff into the business. Okay. And I do corporate trainings, and I work with people in government departments and stuff as well. And the changes that we notice is if you're working at the leadership level, whether it be, C-suite, or whether you're working with, frontline managers, doesn't matter where, if you've got influence over anyone, customer influence as well, if you're working on yourself and you are getting rid of your limiting beliefs and you're looking at those new possibilities there, you're going to find that your staff are more efficient. They want to come to work. There's going to be so many changes there. There's a more lighthearted sense, in a sense of happiness, if the word. I don't like that word because to me, it's more peace and contentment. Happiness comes and goes, but contentment hangs around. And I think when everyone's more content, I think that's when there's this, people settle and they feel safe. There's a phrase that gets used a lot at the moment, psychological safety. And especially with, the last couple of years we've been through, psychological safety is fundamental because a lot of stuff's come to the surface for people in the last couple of years. And a lot of people I see are packing it down. They're like, let's just get back to the normal and pack my stuff down so I can go back and do what I've always done. Well, you're not the same person you were yesterday, and you won't be the same person again tomorrow. How about you work on that stuff now, and you will see the changes at a very tangible and fundamental level, even at the bottom line. Like if people are happier in the workplace, they're going to do better. They're going to do more. And when you give them the opportunity to safely slow down, use their voice, be recognized, people just want to be heard and seen. When we can do this safely for people in the workplace, that's where you really see tangible things changing.
Yeah, I agree. I think if happy boss, happy staff, I reckon. But
Absolutely.
it's not always up to the boss to, I guess, foster the atmosphere in the workplace. I think staff sometimes too, they need to manage upwards and say, well, look, we're not
always
happy.
managing upwards.
Yeah. A lot of places don't allow you to manage upwards, but I think it's a great idea when they're open to that sort of workplace culture and environment. But yeah. So Tania, I do believe you've written a book or two, have you?
No, it is in the process. I'm conjuring it as we speak, but not yet.
No,
thank you for the prompt.
Sorry, I had some vague recollection of you writing a book some time ago. So there you go.
Maybe you're reading into the future. Maybe I need to hurry up.
Could be. Now, what other things do you sort of advocate for people to do with this slow process?
Yeah, look, like you said before, mindfulness, but mindfulness doesn't need to be sitting in the lotus position for an hour. Who's got time for that right now in their lives? Watch that thinking that as well. What it can be doing, I take little simple activities from many successful people around. Brendan Burchard is one of them that I follow quite deeply. A quick reset between every task. That's an amazing ability to make sure that the task that you've just left, you leave it behind. And you put an intent on the next one that you're about to take on. Now, with the amount of people that I work with in my office as well, I have to be very careful that I don't transfer stuff between people. So I really use that little tool, and that little tip takes 60 seconds to reset and go, yep, shut that one down in terms of my neurology and thinking. And now it's time to move on with a very clear focus on what I want and what action steps am I going to take to get there. That's the 60-second reset that I do for myself, especially in between clients. But also boundaries are really important in the work that I do. Again, I'm not going to go home to my husband and give my husband the days that I have. It's, the traumas that I can work with in my office sometimes that people unpack. I can't take that kind of stuff home. So I'm very, very clear about my boundaries. And I think in an executive office space, we need to do that too. Because how many times have you had a fight with the boss and you've taken it home? And then you potentially had a fight with, your husband or your wife, and then you started picking on the kids, and it just gets a little bit out of control. And the reality is we need to stop and we need to forgive ourselves in that moment, but we need really clear boundaries on what we will and won't allow our mindset to do in that moment. So boundaries is something I work on with people very, very clearly. And we need to learn to communicate our boundaries too. There's no point in you having very clear boundaries that are all yours. People aren't telepathic yet. I'm sure they're working on it. But you need to be able to communicate your boundaries eloquently with the rest of the world and then stick by them with consequences, especially with kids. That's a hard one. Every day we challenge on that one. But in the workplace, if you have somebody, for example, coming in late constantly and you're just you're sweeping it under the rug, everybody else in the workplace has already noticed it, and they've noticed your flexibility with boundaries, and you'll start to get tested in other areas as well. So everybody is always watching, they're always listening. And as a leader in the workplace as well, I encourage you heavily to communicate to people the benefits of the slow leadership movement and slowing down every day to reset, because you are going to get a lot more achieved in your world, the things that are actually important to you and not just urgent for you, when you actually do that process of slowing down.
Yeah, I agree. And as I said, I don't practice it. Often I go from one task to another and think, but what I'm doing the next task, I'm probably, and most often true, I'm still thinking about the task previously. How could I have done it differently, whatever. And you're right, you need to slow down, you need to leave things behind, because when you're doing your next task, you're not giving it the full attention that it needs.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I guess, where can people find you?
They can find me in many places. I have two websites, mindfulimpact.com.au or taniadavies.com. I'm a speaker, trainer, and therapist. I do corporate coaching and facilitation at the same time. One thing I do specialize in is breakthrough work, heavy lifting for business owners and executive level as well, to get people really unstuck. I work with a lot of people that are suffering from imposter syndrome. It's not a particularly nice term because there's a lot under it, but that is what we use at the moment. So imposter syndrome, and to get them to an ultimate place of what I call clarity and freedom. That's really what people ultimately ask me for. They want to clear the fog away, and they want to just be clear on where it is they want to go and clean up their past. So that is some of the heavy work I do with people one-on-one. But you can also catch me online. I work with people all over the world through Zoom, as most people do in this day and age. But yes, you can catch me on LinkedIn and Facebook, etc. All the usuals, Instagram as well.
Lovely. And so what wise words would you leave our listeners and viewers with today, Tania?
Absolutely. I think for me, the concept of the fact that when you slow down, the fun also lasts longer.
Geez, that was short and lovely, quick.
It is. Let's not say more than we need to, really, because most people are saying to me, yeah, but I've got all this stuff to do just because I want to get to the next job, the next thing. It's like, but when you're in the moment, when you're mindfully aware in the moment, especially when you're fostering something such as excitement. I'm a huge adventure fan, so I love going hiking, etc. When you're in those moments, do you really want to rush those ones? So if you're brave enough to slow down in those moments, carry that through to the rest of your world. You'll find the fun and the excitement lasts longer.
Oh, very good. That's a good tip. I like that. So it's a bit like eating chocolate. You feel relaxed and really nice. So yeah, carry that over into your work world. Why not? That's a great thing.
Anchor chocolate to other things. So if you feel good when you're eating chocolate, make sure you've got your textbook that for your homework in your hand at the same time, and transfer those good feelings to your textbook.
That's a great, that is a really good tip. I think I'll steal that now and start using it.
Make sure you're in front of your laptop when you're doing it then.
Yeah, that's it. Tania, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really great conversation, and I've learned a lot about slowing down and how by doing that I can actually achieve more during my day. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Talking with the experts.